Well, good day, everybody. Welcome back to Live with Doug. Happy Monday to you. It's another week, and we're continuing our study that we are calling The Kingdom and the Last Days. And today and tomorrow is going to be very interesting, and I expect some pushback. I'm kind of glad I'm not on live with you. If you haven't been with us, if you just stumbled onto this, normally I'm live, but last week and this week I'm doing this recorded pre-recording because I'm away with my son and my family for his wedding, and I'm not sure when I'm going to get back. So I've recorded these, and I'm kind of glad that I'm not live because I'm sure you would you would pummel me in the chats with questions that would distract me. So we're laser focused. Let's get through this, and then we'll talk about it down the road somewhere. All right. So in Matthew 24, if you are familiar with Matthew 24, you know that's part of what we call the Olivet Discourse. And there's a lot of controversy and disagreement about what it means. Well, today and tomorrow, I'm going to try to show you what I think it means. And it's going to be related to the things that we saw last week from Isaiah, but especially Daniel. So if you haven't watched those, then you really shouldn't jump into this one because you're not going to have all the information. All right, now Matthew 24 begins this way. And actually, I want to read from the NET for this. Yeah, why not? Now, as Jesus was going out of the temple courts and walking away, his disciples came to show him the temple buildings. Now, this is not an accident, and we'll come back tomorrow and look more closely at why. But just catch the scene here. They're near this massive temple that Herod has renovated and made into a wonderful complex, right? So it's the temple. Everybody knows about the temple. And the disciples are pointing some things about the temple out to Jesus. And Jesus said, "Do you see all these things? I tell you the truth. Not one stone will be left on another. All will be torn down." So they are marveling at the temple structure. And Jesus says, take a look. It's all going to be pummeled. It's going to be knocked over so that there's not a single stone left on another stone. Now, let that settle in your mind, the significance of this building, this structure, the temple, and Jesus saying it's going to be destroyed. Now, it certainly would have conjured up memories of what they had read about from when this happened the first time in 586 BC. But it also conjures up something else. And this, I think, is so often missed. Look what happens next. As he was sitting on the Mount of Olives, his disciples came to him privately and said, "Tell us, when will these things happen?" Okay, so tell us, when will the temple be destroyed? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? Now, my guess is you have some preconceived notions about what the disciples are asking here. I want to shatter those preconceived notions and draw us to the text itself. Not just this text, but the text he's referring to. This is the disciples, I don't think, are asking what we normally think they are asking. So notice this phrase. What will be the sign of your coming? Did Jesus say he was coming? Jesus said, take a good look at the temple. It's going to be destroyed. And the disciples want to know, when are you coming? What's the sign that you are coming? Were you with us on Thursday Were you with us in our previous lesson? What is the coming that the disciples are asking about? You've been told it's the coming, what we call the second coming, the coming at the end of time. What if that's not the question they're asking? Remember in Daniel 7, Daniel saw one like the Son of Man coming not to earth, but to the Ancient of Days to receive his kingdom. What if the disciples here understand the destruction of the temple correlates to the Son of Man coming to the Ancient of Days to receive his kingdom? Why would they need a sign for that? Because he's not coming to earth, he's going to heaven. Is there a sign that will let us know, Jesus, that you have come into the Ancient of Days in his throne room to receive your kingdom? Is there a sign for that and for the end of the age? Over and over again, we've seen the last days correspond with those visions in Daniel 2 and 7. The end of the kingdoms that existed before Jesus' kingdom. Obviously, they didn't know it was Jesus' kingdom. We now know. In other words, those kingdoms that came before the coming of the Son of Man, the end of that era, that age. And the disciples want to know, is there a significant occurrence? Is there something that will signify to us that you are coming into your kingdom and that pre-kingdom age is over? Now, why would they associate that with the destruction of the temple? I think we might get a clue from another vision that Daniel saw in Daniel chapter 8. So we're going to look at that. Daniel 8 reads like this in the New English translation. In the 3rd year of King Belshazzar's reign, a vision appeared to me, Daniel, after the one that had appeared to me previously, which we've already talked about. In this vision, I saw myself in Susa, the citadel, which is located in the province of Elam. In the vision, I saw myself at the Ulai Canal. I looked up and saw a ram with 2 horns standing at the canal. Its 2 horns were both long, but one was longer than the other. The longer one was coming up after the shorter one. I saw that the ram was butting westward, northward, and southward. No animal was able to stand before it, and there was none who could deliver from its power. It did as it pleased and acted arrogantly. All right, so you see this ram, he's got 2 horns, one's longer than the other, and it's powerful, right? While I was contemplating all this, a male goat was coming from the west over the surface of all the land without touching the ground. The goat had a conspicuous horn between its eyes. So you got this ram, 2-horned ram, and now this other male goat coming in and has a very prominent horn between its eyes. It came to the 2-horned ram that I had seen standing beside the canal and rushed against it with raging strength. I saw it approaching the ram. It went into a fit of rage against the ram and struck it and broke off its 2 horns. The ram had no ability to resist it. The goat hurled the ram to the ground and trampled it. No one could deliver the ram from its power. The male goat acted even more arrogantly, but no sooner had the large horn become strong than it was broken, and there arose 4 conspicuous horns in its place, extending toward the 4 winds of the sky. From one of them came a small horn, but it grew to be very great toward the south and the east and toward the beautiful land. It grew so great it reached the army of heaven, and it brought about the fall of some of the army and some of the stars to the ground where it trampled them. It also acted arrogantly against the prince of the army, from whom the daily sacrifice was removed and whose sanctuary was thrown down. The army was given over along with the daily sacrifice. In course of his sinful rebellion, it hurled truth to the ground and enjoyed success. All right, there's a lot here, a lot of imagery. And we're going to come back through this after we get the interpretation. And I'm just going to tell you on the front end, I don't know every nuance of fulfillment here. I don't think we have to. Because we're going to be shown what we need to know in order to put these pieces together, at least to give us some insight into what all this means. So don't get too caught up in all the details, but we'll come back and look at some of this. Then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to the one who was speaking, "To what period of time does the vision pertain?" This vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the destructive act of rebellion and the giving over of both the sanctuary and army to be trampled. He said to me, "To 2,300 evenings and mornings, then the sanctuary will be put right again." While I, Daniel, was watching the vision, I sought to understand it. Now one who appeared to be a man was standing before me. All right, so Daniel's watching all this. He wants to know what it means, and there's someone standing there. So he says, what does it mean? He says, "Then I heard a human voice coming from between the banks of the Ulai. It called out, 'Gabriel, enable this person to understand the vision.'" So here's what it means. "So he approached the place where I was standing. As he came, I felt terrified and fell flat on the ground. Then he said to me, 'Understand, son of man, that the vision pertains to the time of the end.'" The time of the end. Now, he doesn't say end of the age, but there's a time of the end he's talking about. "As he spoke with me, I fell into a trance with my face to the ground, but he touched me and stood me upright. Then he said, 'I am going to inform you about what will happen in the latter time of wrath.'" This word latter is, in the Greek translation, is the word eschaton. The last days uses this word, the latter time of wrath. Whose wrath? Against whom? See this imagery. It's the time of the end. It's the latter time of wrath. For the vision pertains to the appointed time of the end. The ram that you saw with the two horns stands for the kings of Media and Persia. Remember, we saw this in the other visions that Daniel saw. You've got Babylon, then the Medo-Persians, then Greece, then Rome. Here in this vision, he sees the ram with two horns, and that is the Media-Persia Empire that conquered Babylon, the second of the four beasts. Now, this vision is different. It's not about the beast, but he sees all these different visions capturing the same thing. The male goat that crushes the ram with the two horns, the male goat is the king of Greece. And the large horn between its eyes is the first king. All right, you know this, right? I have a very intelligent audience. Who was the first great king of Greece that conquered the Persians? Alexander the Great. I mean, can we just pause here for a minute and see how amazing this is? Centuries before the fact, Daniel sees exactly what's going to happen. The Medo-Persia Empire is going to be strong, but then down the road, Greece is going to rise, and the first great king, Alexander, is going to destroy it. And in fact, he's going to destroy most other nations as well. In fact, this is so amazing that skeptics and cynics don't believe that Daniel was written centuries before the fact because, of course, they deny prophecy and the ability to know the future. Even God doesn't know the future, so this had to have been written after the fact. The horn that was broken and in whose place there arose four other strands the horn that was broken in whose place there arose four other stands for four kingdoms that will arise from his first nation, though they will not have his strength. When Alexander died, the kingdom was given to four of his four other leaders, four kings. The kingdom was split into four. And Gabriel foretold this. Toward the end of their rule, when rebellious acts are complete, a rash and deceitful king will arise. His power will be great, but it will not be by his strength alone. He will cause terrible destruction. He will be successful in what he undertakes. He will destroy powerful people and the people of the holy ones. By his treachery, he will succeed through deceit. He will have arrogant attitude, and he will destroy many who are unaware of his schemes. He will rise up against the prince of princes, yet he will be broken apart, but not by human agency. This may be Antiochus Epiphanes, who was a ruthless leader in the intertestamental period, and he was harsh on the Jews, and he sacrificed a pig in the temple and desecrated it. So he's going to rise up against the prince of princes. Who's that? And he will be broken apart, but not by human agency. There's going to be another force at work in his demise. The vision of the evenings and mornings that was told to you is correct, but you should seal up the vision, for it refers to a time many days from now. I, Daniel, was exhausted and sick for days. Then I got up and carried out the king's business, but I was astonished at the vision, and there was no one to explain it. All right, so again, there's a lot of details here, and I don't pretend to have the answer to every nuance. But I want to go back to the actual vision itself. So some of the things that are clear, right? We are given the fact that this is the Medo-Persia Empire that is conquered by Alexander the Great, the king of Greece. We know some of that timing. And we know there's going to be a great king after him, which Antiochus Epiphanes fits very, very well. And we know this is going to be toward the end. And there's a part of this that deals with the great wrath at the end. So I want to go back to the vision itself and see if we can draw a couple of ties to what the disciples were talking about. There's such interesting things here. So going back to verse 8, the male goat acted even more arrogantly, but no sooner had the large horn become strong than it was broken, and there arose four conspicuous horns in its place. So that's Alexander the Great. He acted arrogantly, and then he's destroyed, and the four parts of the kingdom are given to four other kings, lesser kings. And that we know that happened. From one of them came a small horn, but it grew very great toward the south and east toward the beautiful land. That's probably Israel that's being referred to here. Eventually, that led to the kings over the Jews, and that whole line leading down to, even in the Roman Empire, to King Herod, for instance. It grew so great it reached the army of heaven. Now, just hold that in your mind for a minute. This army grew so great it reached the army of heaven, the host of heaven. and it brought about the fall of some of the army and some of the stars to the ground where it trampled them. Again, I don't understand all this, but the host of heaven is the heavenly army. We just came through Christmas time. Remember the host of heaven that appeared to the shepherds who are watching their flocks by night? And we just so often misunderstand that text. Did I mention this last week? I can't remember if I mentioned this in previous recent lesson, but the shepherds are out there and the angel of the Lord appears, which might have been God himself, and that blinding light. And then there's this army. This host of heaven is an army. These are not cute, pudgy angels. They don't have wings and halos. Think about the most fierce group of soldiers you can imagine. And they're not singing, Gloria, Gloria. They're not singing. They are shouting, glory to God in the highest, and peace on earth with many his peace. This would have been, there's a reason the shepherds were on their face. I mean, there's the blinding light in the darkness and this intense army in doing army chants, glorifying the God of heaven. When you think of the host of heaven or the army of heaven, you need to think of legions and legions of angels. And this earthly army reached the army of heaven and brought about the fall of some of that army. And some of the stars came. Do you remember in Ephesians 6? Paul says there, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers, the spiritual forces of this darkness. There's this battle raging. There's this whole realm of existence that we just don't perceive on a regular basis, where there's armies battling. And somehow in this vision, I don't understand exactly how this works, but in this vision, this great human army is somehow doing battle with this heavenly army. All right, I got to move on. It's fascinating to me. It also acted arrogantly against the prince of the army, the captain of the hosts, which is usually the Lord in Scripture, and from whom the daily sacrifice was removed and whose sanctuary was thrown down. That's another word or another way to describe the temple. So you got the captain of the hosts, and it's his sanctuary, his temple that is thrown down. And the army was given over along with the daily sacrifice. In the course of his sinful rebellion, it hurled truth to the ground and enjoyed success. Then I heard a holy one speaking. Another holy one said to him, to what period of time does this vision pertain? This vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the destructive act of rebellion and the giving over of both the sanctuary or temple and the army to be trampled. And he says to the 2,300 evenings and mornings. I'm not sure exactly what that means. Then the sanctuary will be put right again. And he talks about the time of the end and the wrath, the latter time of wrath. So I know it raises questions, and again, I say I don't have all the answers in a way that's going to make this just a nice, tight little package. But can you at least see the terminology and the links between Medo-Persia and then Greece and Alexander the Great and the kingdom being divided up, and the idea of the sanctuary being attacked and this great army and the latter time of wrath at the end, and the disciples reading this and pondering this, and the Daniel 7 vision and the Daniel 2 vision, and hearing Jesus say this temple is going to be destroyed, it's going to be knocked over so that there won't even be one stone left on another. And the disciples start putting this all together from Daniel, say, oh, that sounds like the prophecies of Daniel. When, Lord? What is the sign of you coming before the Ancient of Days to receive your kingdom? And the destruction of the temple. And what is the sign of the end of this pre-kingdom of heaven age? I think they would only ask for a sign if they didn't expect to be able to see it. Because it's not happening here. I mean, some of it's happening here. The destruction of the temple is happening on earth. But they recognize the Son of Man is going into the Ancient of Days presence to receive the kingdom. Interesting, huh? You may have to go back and listen to this again, and more importantly, read carefully through the Daniel prophecies. All right, we'll come back tomorrow, then and work our way through the rest of Matthew 24 and see if we can put some of these pieces together. Have a great day. God bless.